The Silent Void. The crystalline corridors of the Zelethi research vessel, whispering light hummed with gentle energy. Captain Callan pressed her translucent palm against the navigation console, her 6 delicate tendrils adjusting controls with practiced grace. The Zelethi were beings of pure thought given physical form, their bodies shimmering like captured starlight. They had evolved in the calm nebula of the Andromeda Reach, where violence was unknown and curiosity drove all advancement. "Captain," called first researcher Emix, her voice a melodic chime, "we're detecting unusual quantum signatures from the 7th planet's moon." Callan floated to Emix's station, her ethereal form casting rainbow patterns on the walls. "Define unusual." "The readings suggest artificial structures beneath the surface. Ancient ones, perhaps as old as the precursor civilizations." The discovery sent ripples of excitement through the crew of 20 Zelethi. They were explorers of knowledge, seekers of wisdom, collectors of the galaxy's secrets. In their 3,000 years of space travel, they had never encountered anything hostile. The universe, to them, was a library waiting to be read. "Take us into orbit," Callan decided. "Prepare the excavation beams. Let's see what secrets sleep beneath that ice." The whispering light descended toward the frozen moon, its elegant spiral design reflecting the Zelethi philosophy of harmony. As they began their scans, something stirred in the ancient depths, something that had waited eons for visitors. Deep beneath layers of compressed ice, a massive structure activated, black metal corridors lit with crimson energy as systems older than most civilizations awakened. The Zelethi had found a void anchor, a dimensional prison built by a long-dead race to contain horrors from between realities. Energy spike detected. Emix's melodic voice turned sharp with concern. "The structure is opening." Before Callan could respond, space itself seemed to tear. From the rift poured creatures of living shadow, beings that existed partially in their dimension and partially in others. They moved like smoke given hunger, their forms constantly shifting between states of matter. These were the Devourers, entities that fed on consciousness itself. The first wave struck the whispering light without warning. The ship's shields, designed for cosmic radiation and micrometeorites, offered no protection against beings that could phase through matter. Zelethi crew members screamed as the shadows touched them, their luminous forms dimming as their thoughts were consumed. "Emergency protocols." Callan commanded, though fear, an emotion her species rarely experienced, crept into her voice. "Activate the quantum beacon. Call for help." The ship's automated systems launched a sphere of condensed light into space. The quantum beacon pulsed once, sending a desperate message across the galaxy: coordinates, ship identification, and a simple plea for assistance. Then the shadows reached the bridge. 3 sectors away, in a region of space most civilizations marked with warnings, Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station Typhon detected the signal. Lieutenant Jack Morrison, a veteran of the Mars conflicts, nearly spilled his coffee as his screens lit up with alerts. "Sir," Morrison called to Commander Elena Rodriguez, "we've got an honest-to-God distress beacon, non-human origin." Rodriguez, a woman whose calm demeanor had been forged in the chaos of the Europa uprising, studied the data. "Location: neutral space, but close to the Zelethi research stone. The signal pattern matches their technology." Rodriguez's eyes narrowed. Humanity had been isolated from the galactic community for 50 years, ever since the Deathworld incident, when alien ambassadors discovered Earth's true nature, a planet where the rain could strip flesh, where the fauna included creatures that actively hunted predators, where the flora itself could be carnivorous. The aliens had fled in terror, declaring humans too dangerous for peaceful coexistence. "What's our nearest asset?" Rodriguez asked. "The Storm Squadron. They're running training exercises 2 jumps away." Rodriguez made her decision. "Patch me through to Admiral Chen." Within minutes, the call reached the United Earth Defense Force headquarters buried beneath the Himalayas. Admiral Sarah Chen, known as the Dragon of Luna for her role in ending the colonial wars, Listen to the report with growing interest. The Zilithi are pacifists, Chen mused to her staff. They don't even have weapons on their ships, if they're calling for help. It's an opportunity, agreed General Marcus Webb, his prosthetic arm, a reminder of humanity's violent past, gleaming under the lights. Show the galaxy we're not just warriors. We're protectors. Chen nodded. Deploy the Storm Squadron. Full combat readiness. The Storm Squadron represented humanity's finest. 5 ships crewed by people from Earth's most extreme environments. The flagship Resilience was commanded by Captain Diana Storm herself, a woman who had grown up in the underwater cities of the Pacific Deep. Her crew included survivors from the Sahara terraforming projects, veterans of the Asteroid Mining Guild, and colonists from the sulfur storm worlds of the outer system. As the ships powered up their drives, preparing for the jump to the distress coordinates, news reached the Galactic Alliance Council on Haven Prime. The council chamber, a magnificent dome where 100 species gathered, erupted in panic. The Deathworlders are mobilizing, shrieked Ambassador Vilix of the Quathi Collective. 5 warships have left their containment zone. Elder Zix of the Morvac hegemony, ancient even by galactic standards, studied the trajectory data with growing alarm. They're heading directly for the Zalathi distress signal. We must warn them. Another voice rose from the assembly. The humans will make things worse. They solve everything with violence. But their warnings would arrive too late. The Storm Squadron had already entered jump space, racing toward a meeting that would change the galaxy's perception of humanity forever. As the human ships hurtled through folded space, Captain Storm reviewed the mission parameters with her officers. Lieutenant Commander Park, whose family had survived 5 generations in Korean mountain bunkers, brought up the tactical display. The Zelithi vessel appears to be under attack by unknown entities, Park reported. Sensor data is strange. The attackers aren't registering as solid matter. Dimensional anomalies, asked Chief Engineer Cooper, a man who had helped build the first permanent base on Venus. Possibly. Whatever they are, standard weapons might not work. Storm smiled, the kind of smile that had terrified aliens and inspired humans throughout her career. Good thing we never do anything standard. Prep the gravity hammers and phase disruptors. If these things exist between dimensions, we'll hit them in all of them. Back on the Whispering Light, Captain Callan watched in horror as her crew fell one by one. The Devourers moved through the ship like a plague of darkness, leaving dimmed and catatonic Zalathi in their wake. Only 5 of her people remained conscious, huddled in the central chamber. The beacon, whispered Imix, her light barely flickering. Did anyone receive it? The Alliance will come, Callan tried to reassure her, though hope faded with each passing moment. They must come. But fate had different plans. The first ships to answer their call wouldn't be the gentle races of the Alliance. They would be the children of Earth, the Deathworlders, the Stormborn, the ones who had turned survival into an art form. The human fleet burst from jump space with all the subtlety of a thunderclap. 5 ships, each one a testament to human engineering philosophy. Not beautiful, but absolutely lethal. Their arrival sent ripples through local space, and every sensor in the system turned toward them. Contact established, reported the communications officer aboard the Resilience. We're reading multiple life signs on the Zelithi vessel, but they're fading fast. And sir, we've got about 300 unidentified entities surrounding the ship. Captain Storm studied the tactical display, her mind already working through combat scenarios. All ships, this is Storm Actual. We've got friendlies in distress and unknown hostiles. Weapons free, but watch your fire. Let's show these things why humans are the galaxy's apex predators. As the Storm Squadron accelerated toward the besieged vessel, neither the Zilithi nor their attackers knew that everything was about to change. The humans were coming, and with them came the fury of a death world. Controlled, directed, and absolutely unstoppable. The Devourers, ancient predators from between dimensions, were about to meet something they had never encountered in their eons of existence. a species that had evolved not just to survive predation, but to become the ultimate predators themselves. And in the cold darkness of space, 5 human ships began their attack run, while the galaxy held its breath and waited to see what the Deathworlders would do next. When nightmares meet their match. The Storm Squadron burst into the battle zone with orchestrated chaos. Captain Diana Storm stood on the bridge of the Resilience, her eyes tracking the swirling mass of shadow entities surrounding the Zelethi vessel. Her tactical officer, Commander Lisa Park, had already designated them as shades in the combat system. Analysis complete, Captain, reported Dr. James Chen, the fleet's xenobiologist. These entities exist in a state of quantum flux. They're simultaneously in our dimension and elsewhere. Standard weapons will pass right through them. Then we don't use standard weapons, Storm replied. All ships execute pattern Omega. Hit them with everything exotic we've got. The human ships spread into a combat formation that would have made any military theorist weep with joy. The Resilience led the charge, flanked by the Defiant and Unconquered, while the Adamant and Relentless swept wide to create a kill box. Gravity hammers online, announced Chief Weapons Officer Miguel Rodriguez. Phase disruptors charged. Quantum torpedoes loaded. Fire. The first salvo erupted from the human ships like controlled stars. Gravity hammers, weapons that compressed space itself into projectiles, slammed into the shades. Unlike conventional weapons, these distortions affected everything, regardless of dimensional state. Several shades simply ceased to exist, crushed out of reality by overwhelming gravitational force. The phase disruptors came next, beams of energy that oscillated through multiple dimensional frequencies. Where they struck, shades screamed, a sound that bypassed ears and went straight to the brain. For the first time in eons, the predators felt pain. Inside the whispering light, Captain Callan couldn't believe her senses. The rescue she had prayed for had arrived. But these ships, they moved like predators, struck like lightning, and brought weapons that defied her understanding of physics. Captain, Imix whispered, her form barely maintaining cohesion. Those are human ships. Fear rippled through the surviving Zelethi. Humans, the Deathworlders, the nightmare species that even the warrior races avoided. They had answered the distress call, but would their cure be worse than the disease? Outside, the battle intensified. The shades, realizing they faced a genuine threat, converged on the human ships in waves. They phased through hull plating, seeking to drain the consciousness of the crews within. They encountered their second surprise. Boarders on Deck 7, reported a security officer aboard the Defiant. Captain John Havoc Mitchell, a man who had earned his nickname during the Titan uprising, smiled grimly. Released the countermeasures. Throughout the human ships, emergency protocols activated. The crews wore neural inhibitors, devices developed during the psychic wars on Mars. Corridors flooded with electromagnetic pulse fields. Most importantly, the humans themselves proved remarkably resistant to mental attacks. Millennia of evolution on a death world had given them minds as resilient as their bodies. Marine Sergeant Kelly O'Brien, stationed on the Defiant, came face to face with a shade in Corridor 7. The entity reached for her mind with tendrils of darkness. It found not fear, but the iron will of someone who had grown up in the radioactive wastes of the Australian exclusion zone. That all you got? O'Brien snarled, raising her pulse rifle. The weapon, modified with phasing technology, caught the shade's center mass. It shrieked and dissipated. Thought so. Similar scenes played out across the fleet. The shades, accustomed to victims who crumbled at first contact, found themselves fighting beings who treated mental assault as a minor inconvenience. Humans who had survived in places where the very air could kill had developed psychological defenses that made them nearly immune to fear-based attacks. Captain Storm observed the battle with calculating eyes. They're adapting, trying new tactics. Good. That means they can learn. And if they can learn. She turned to her science officer. Chen, can we communicate with them? Working on it, Captain. Their thought patterns are unlike anything in our database, but there's definitely intelligence there. Keep at it. Rodriguez, prepare the Hellstorm protocol. Across the fleet, weapons officers received new targeting data. The Hellstorm protocol was humanity's answer to overwhelming odds. A coordinated strike using every exotic weapon in their arsenal, timed to create overlapping fields of destruction. But first, Storm had another card to play. Open a channel to the Zelethi vessel, she ordered. On the Whispering Lights bridge, Captain Kellen startled as her communication system activated. A human face appeared on the screen, scared, determined, with eyes that had seen too much but still held compassion. Captain Kellen, I'm Captain Diana Storm of the United Earth Defense Force. We're here to help. Can you give us any information about your attackers? Kellen struggled to overcome her species' instinctive fear of humans. They came from the artifact, an ancient prison. They feed on consciousness itself. Understood. Are your shields operational? Minimal power only. That'll have to do. Tell your people to brace themselves. This is about to get intense. Storm cut the connection and opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, execute Hellstorm. Let's show these shadows what happens when you threaten those under human protection. The space around the Zelethi vessel erupted into apocalyptic fury. Gravity weapons created crushing vortexes of twisted space-time. Phase cannons swept through every known dimensional frequency. Quantum torpedoes detonated in cascading waves, each explosion creating brief tears in reality itself. The Shades, caught in the crossfire, began to falter. They had never encountered such ferocity, such calculated destruction. These weren't just weapons, they were statements of intent, declarations that humanity would not allow innocents to suffer. But the true surprise came from Dr. Chen. Captain, I've established communication. The Shades, they're not just predators. They're prisoners. The artifact wasn't containing them. It was their jail. Storm's expression shifted. Explain. They were trapped between dimensions by an ancient race, slowly going mad from isolation. The Zelethi accidentally released them. They're not evil. They're desperate, starving, insane from eons of captivity. The bridge fell silent. Storm made a decision that would echo through galactic history. All ships, ceasefire. Chen, can we help them? Possibly, if we can stabilize their dimensional state, anchor them to our reality. But it's theoretical at best. Do it. Havoc, cover the science ship. Everyone else, defensive positions only. The sudden cessation of human fire confused both the Shades and the Zelethi. Captain Kellen watched in amazement as the human ships reconfigured, projecting energy fields unlike anything she'd seen. They're trying to help the attackers, Imix whispered. Chen worked frantically, recalibrating the fleet's exotic weapons into something new. We need to create a dimensional anchor, something to stabilize their quantum state. Captain, this might not work. Since when has that stopped us? Storm replied. Earth didn't raise quitters. The modified weapons fired again, but this time they didn't destroy. Instead, they created a web of energy that began to stabilize local space-time. The Shades, sensing the change, paused in their attack. Then, breakthrough. One Shade solidified partially, its form shifting from pure shadow to something almost tangible. For the first time in eons, it existed fully in one dimension. The entity's psychic scream changed from hunger to gratitude. It's working, Chen shouted. They're stabilizing. Over the next hour, the human fleet performed a miracle. Using technology adapted on the fly and sheer determination, they anchored the Shades to reality. The entities, no longer trapped between dimensions, began to regain their sanity. Communication, real communication, became possible. The being that had first solidified projected thoughts to the human ships. We remember ourselves. We were the eternal ones, explorers like those we attacked, trapped for so long, so hungry, so alone. Storm responded through the communication system. You're free now, both from your prison and from your madness. What will you do? We must atone. Those we harmed, can we help them? The Eternal Ones, their sanity restored, turned to the Zealoty vessel. Using abilities that had once brought terror, they now began healing. Zealoty crew members who had been drained slowly recovered, their consciousness restored by the very beings who had attacked them. Captain Kalen, watching her crew return to life, felt her entire worldview shift. The humans, the dreaded Deathworlders, had not only saved them, but had found a solution that saved everyone, even their attackers. Open a channel to Captain Storm, she requested. When Storm's face appeared, Kalen spoke with newfound respect. Captain, I don't understand. You could have destroyed them all. Why show mercy? Storm's scared face softened, because we know what it's like to be feared, to be isolated, to be seen as monsters. Earth taught us to be strong, but it also taught us when to use that strength. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in destroying your enemy, it's in turning them into an ally. Word of the incident spread through the galaxy like wildfire. The Galactic Alliance Council, which had trembled at news of human ships leaving their space, now faced a complete reversal of their assumptions. They saved everyone, Ambassador Velik said, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. The Zealoty, the attackers, everyone. Elder Zix nodded slowly. Perhaps we've misjudged them. Yes, they come from a death world. Yes, they're incredibly dangerous, but they use that strength to protect, not destroy. Over the following weeks, everything changed. The Zealoty became humanity's first advocates in the Alliance, sharing stories of human compassion and ingenuity. The Eternal Ones, grateful for their freedom and sanity, pledged themselves as guardians of the space lanes. And humanity. They finally got what they had wanted for 50 years, a chance to show the galaxy who they really were. Captain Storm stood on the observation deck of the Resilience, watching as human and alien ships worked side by side to study the ancient artifact. The prison would be repurposed, its technology used to help other trapped beings across the galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Park joined her. Think this changes everything. Storm smiled. It's a start. The galaxy feared us because we come from a world that tries to kill us every day. They didn't understand that when everything tries to kill you, you learn the value of life. You become strong not just to survive, but to protect those who can't protect themselves. She turned to face Park. Earth made us warriors, but it also made us human. And humans, we're at our best when we're protecting others. In the months that followed, the term Deathworlder took on new meaning. Yes, humans came from a world of death, but they had transformed that experience into something powerful. The ability to face any horror, solve any problem, and protect any innocent. The Storm Squadron became the prototype for a new initiative, the Galactic Response Force, where humans worked alongside other species to answer distress calls throughout known space. Where once aliens fled at the sight of human ships, they now felt relief. The galaxy learned what Earth's children had always known. Sometimes you need monsters to fight monsters, and sometimes those monsters are the best hope you have. Captain Diana Storm received the Alliance Medal of Unity, the first human to be so honored. In her acceptance speech, broadcast to 1,000 worlds, she spoke words that would be remembered for generations. We come from a death world, yes. Every day on Earth is a battle for survival. But that struggle taught us something precious. That life, all life, is worth fighting for. We answer your calls not because we love war, but because we hate seeing others suffer. This is humanity's promise to the galaxy. When you call for help, we will come. When you face the darkness, we will stand beside you. Because that's what humans do. We survive, we protect, and we never give up. The applause that followed echoed across the stars, and for the first time in 50 years, humanity was no longer alone. They had found their place in the galaxy, not as conquerors or monsters, but as the guardians they were always meant to be. And in the vast expanse of space, whenever a distress beacon lit up the darkness, beings of all species knew that help would come. Perhaps in sleek Alliance cruisers, perhaps in the crystalline ships of the Eternal Ones. But when the threat was greatest, when hope seemed lost, they knew that humanity's children would appear, born from a death world, forged in adversity, and absolutely unstoppable when defending those in need. The Deathworlders had become the galaxy's greatest protectors, and the universe was better for it.